Welcome to this rather amazing meeting. I think we should describe it as a rather experimental meeting. We think it's going to go right, but it just might go a little bit wrong, but let's all hope that it goes completely right. My name is John Rose, member of the Socialist Workers' Party for a very long time, over 40 years. I'm also the author of The Myths of Zionism. I'm also the author of a pamphlet called Israel, the Hijacked State, more about that in a moment. We'll conduct this discussion with Leila Khaled, who is in Amman in Jordan, and I believe she might be behind me now. Hello, Leila.
Hello.
I just want to introduce your co-author for a moment, Sarah Irving, and just to explain to our audience here, this is the Marxism Festival, Leila and Sarah, a most marvellous event, the largest of its kind in Europe of socialists, over 4,500 socialists gathered together. And I just want to introduce Sarah Irving and explain that Sarah, you're in Ramallah, whilst Leila is in Amman in Jordan, and that Sarah, you're the co-author of this fantastic book. I think I got the title correct, which is Leila Khaled, Icon of the Palestinian Revolution. And we've got lots of copies of the book on sale, and at the very least, if you've had the privilege to sit in this audience listening to Leila, you've got to go away and buy at least one copy immediately after this session. Now, Leila, I don't suppose you may remember me, but 10 years ago, Ghada Kami and I, a Palestinian writer, invited you to Britain for a tour. And it was a fantastic tour that was fraught inevitably with some controversy, but I was particularly pleased, and I choose my words with great care, I was particularly pleased when I presented you with a pamphlet I wrote called Israel, the Hijacked State, and I did make the point that political activities had helped to inspire the title. I'm not going to say any more about it, I hope the point is clear, and I do hope you remember that. Let me just explain how we're going to run the meeting. I'm going to really hand over to Sarah and to Leila for the first 20 minutes a discussion about the book they've done together. In other words, to give you a kind of introduction, a brief summary of what their book is about and why indeed Leila really is an icon of the Palestinian Revolution. Payment then will open up with a couple of brief questions, and then we're going to throw it open to the floor, but it's going to be very difficult to do, it's very crowded, and I do appeal for questions only. I really am going to insist on questions only. If you have a question to Leila, as it were, after the first half of the meeting, and please turn that off. All mobiles must go off. Oh, right, okay. Please, in Ramallah, turn your phones off. But when we get to questions, I'll remind you of this. You've got to come down in twos and threes to get maximum questions to Leila and to Sarah. So, Sarah, if that's okay with you, I'm going to pass to you, Sarah, to open up a discussion with Leila about the book.
Okay, I can just about hear you now. Okay, I quite like the fact that you chose that particular introduction, because that's also the occasion that I first met Leila on that trip where you invited her to the UK. I've been in Palestine during the big invasion over Easter 2002, and then after you had invited Leila to the UK and she'd been in London, Linda Clare from Manchester Palestine Solidarity Campaign then invited her up to Manchester for an event, and Linda and Leila have been friends for many, many years, and that's kind of how this book the idea of this book first came about. It's 7 years since I approached Pluto with the idea, so it's been quite a long time in the making. And yeah, I mean, effectively, it's a biography. The first main set of material for the book is a series of interviews that Leila very kindly gave up the time to do with me over a week in Amman in 2008, and then kind of follow-up interviews by Skype and phone afterwards. What I suppose I've tried to do, and one of the questions that I sometimes get asked is whether there's going to be an Arabic translation of this, and I kind of have great reservations about whether this is the right book for that, because I suppose one of the things it does is sets Leila's life history in a context, I guess to an extent, of how she has become an iconic figure for Palestinian solidarity activists around the world, but particularly the way in which she's seen by the left, by the women's movement, and by Palestine solidarity activists, and that's kind of an international thing. Maybe this is a point for Leila to come in. I mean, obviously she wrote an autobiography in the early 1970s, and I know, Leila, that you've been, people have spoken to you over the years about writing an autobiography, but it's something that you've not done yet. So it would be interesting to know how it now feels to have a biography out there, but to still maybe have the idea of an autobiography awaiting you.
Leila, we really want to hear your voice too.
Yes, time lag, you have to wait.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you. And thanks for Sarah, who brought my biography again in a book by which I tried to put my experience as a refugee, a Palestinian refugee, who is struggling for liberation and for freedom and dignity. I think that she wrote it in a very nice way and smooth way that anybody can read it and understand. It's not only me as a woman, but it's also the story of all women and all those who are struggling for their cause and for their just cause, for returning to our homeland. This is our right, and that a lot gave their lives for this return, this right of return to Palestinians. I hope that this book can add to the revolutionary movement in the world, because it's a duty to this experience in its objective and positive sides. So next, the generations to come to know about it and to get benefit out of it.
What keeps you going, Leila, after it's a long, bitter struggle, nearly all of the 20th century, and the movement is still enormously powerful? Can you describe for us what it is that keeps people, activists like yourself, going?
Because occupation is still there, as 6 million Palestinians in diaspora. This is a duty to us to restore our dignity, our land, our homes in Palestine. And this is the dream of 10 million Palestinians. It's a dream for all those who support the Palestinian struggle as a just cause. It's against a hideous occupation. This is the last occupation. We thought it would be the last of the 20th century, yet it's still ongoing. Now it has been 64 years. This ongoing Nakba. Only in May 15th we commemorated the 64th anniversary of our Nakba. As long as oppression is there, as long as terrorism is there, by which I mean occupation is the clear image of terrorism, especially with the state terrorism of Israel against the Palestinians. This gives us more provocation to my right to think that way, and we have capacity to continue. We are not alone. We have supporters like you. We have supporters all over the world. This will give us more and more strength to continue in spite of all the obstacles. and difficulties and the sufferings of being a refugee.
Just tell us a little more about the book. If you wanted to highlight one story or one set of facts from the book to explain to others what it is about, what part of the book would you most want to highlight?
I think the important thing is how a woman can cope with being a mother and a wife and to be a freedom fighter. This is an important issue for all women who are struggling for their rights, that we don't have only one mission, either being a wife or a mother or a freedom fighter. A freedom fighter is a human being, and this Sarah could do it in a very nice way, that when she came to my house and we sat together, we spoke, and she asked this question. I think whenever a human being is under oppression, he can do a lot. I can live with I can have children, I can take care of them, and at the same time, I'm teaching them that they have a duty for the future, not only to my children, but to the new generation, to continue this struggle, because I don't think that I myself will witness the liberation of Palestine, but my children, and this deserves all the sufferings and all the sacrifices that we give, because it's very important for a human being to be dignified in this country. This is from one side. From the other side, other experiences in this struggle is also important. But I think this subject is very important to me to be focused on, and Sarah did it very well.
You talked about the importance of solidarity. Do you discuss solidarity in the book, and could you tell us a little bit about that?
We have, yes, I answered this question, because first of all, we are part of the whole world. We are not actually, and also we witnessed through the past 10-15 years that we have received solidarity from people all over the world, even more that some people came to Palestine and they died there, they were killed by the Israelis, like Rachel Corrie, and also the British journalist, Handel, who was also killed by the Israelis, who was shot by them. I think solidarity expressed by other people, progressive forces, is also mentioned in the book, because this will tell us that in spite of all the atrocities and the difficulties, yet we have the hope when other people are supporting us in this way. Sarah is also expressed her solidarity by going to Palestine and by writing a book. Not only this book, but also another book about Gaza, and she put highlights on places to be seen in Palestine as historical places. I think this is the expression of solidarity to the struggle of Palestinians, and I think this is mentioned also in the book.
I want to put one more question. I'm going to pass to my comrade here, Payman, but this is to you, Sarah. I suspect that Leila's being far too modest, and you can be a bit less modest on her behalf. So let me put the same question to you about the book. What was it that particularly struck you about writing this book with Leila. What's particularly caught your imagination? Just obviously many things would have done, but just highlight for us perhaps one or two in helping to write the book that caught your imagination. That's to Sarah.
I already said that not just this book, but the others in the series, that it's one of the first of. It's a series that's intended to look at why people devote their lives to a political struggle or a political cause, what causes them to do that, and also the impact it then has on their lives. And so, you know, the series doesn't just look at Leila, it'll look over the years at a very wide range of figures from around the world. And I think one of the most interesting things for me was to look beyond the reason that Leila is so famous, the operations that she carried out in 1969 and 17, and to look beyond that at why a person who, why a person and how a person is shaped by the circumstances of their life to become a fighter, you know, to make those kind of decisions. And that's, you know, that's something that is never easy, to devote your life to a cause in that kind of way, and has really serious implications and repercussions on people's lives. You know, Leila, yes, she's a wife and she's a mother, and in some ways those are very normal things, but because of what she has, because of the way she's committed herself to the cause, she's never been able to do that in what most people would perceive as a normal way. And I think that's something that's important to engage with, not just on a kind of big historical level, but, you know, obviously she's a much more dramatic example of it, but it's something that anybody involved in a political struggle on any level needs to consider and can engage with, I think. So that's very much one thing. She's also raised the issue of women in struggle, and that was one of the reasons that I guess wanted to write this book to start with. One of the questions that I got asked recently was, would I have written a book about a male Palestinian figure? And actually, the answer would probably be, when I decided to do it, no. But I probably would now. But yeah, I mean, one of the most interesting things about Leila's life story is around how women operate within political movements, and particularly within armed movements, because that is and in the book that have made the movement quite have equality for its members. Women have different experiences of involvement, and that's something that all political movements need to deal with and to be aware of. And she was very much part of changing those kind of attitudes within her own political sphere.
Well, I just want to say I'm very honored to be in this discussion with you, because I think you really are not only a symbol of the Palestinian struggle, but really of its endurance and perseverance, which has kept many of us going when we, encounter difficulties in our activism. So I'm very honored to have this discussion with you. And I should also say, when I told my Iranian friends and comrades in Iran that I was going to have this discussion with you, they were very jealous, and they sent their solidarity to you, and also lots of questions and discussions that I won't mention here, we don't have the time. And I want to go into discussion about some of the current issues of the moment. One thing is that, in the last months, Israel has been very busy in beating the drums of war against Iran. I mean, I don't want to go into that discussion, but I think the main reason of doing this is distraction, because the Israeli rulers are so terrified about their own future and the resistance which is coming up, that they are trying to distract attention towards the war with Iran. And I think there are two reasons for this, and I want you to comment on them. One is obviously, I think, really, which we should be positive about, is the shift in public opinion worldwide. Because the atrocities of Israel, its hypocrisy and its nature as an apartheid state, is being exposed every single day. There was a report a few days ago by British lawyers saying, Palestinian children being imprisoned without conviction and so on. And part of this global movement is the BDS movement, boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, which is very important, I think, and I would like you to comment on how we can link that up with what is happening in Palestine itself. And the second reason for the anxiety of the Israeli government's rulers is, I think, the Arab Spring, the revolutions in the region, and because they cannot deal with democracies in the Middle East, and I think they are very anxious about that resistance spilling over in Israel and in Palestine, and we have seen some of the examples. I mean, when it is about Israel, it's of course, maybe I should actually stop here and have you first tell us something about the BDS movement and how you see the global shift of in solidarity and public opinion, and then I will come back to the revolutions in the region.
Thank you very much. I think that this BDS campaign is a repetition for an experience, a world had experienced it before against the apartheid in South Africa at that time. And the world would help enormous people of South Africa, the people who were from the apartheid. And I think this was the same can experience the BDS, which is a peaceful means of resistance of occupation, because in the 21st century it's trying to end any kind of yet still that Israel is going too far. Not only after building its state on the expense of the Palestinians, but also it's expanding its settlements and bringing more settlers to be in our land. Israel is kicking out people, forcing them to be on the borders of Palestine with Jordan now, and they have confiscated hundreds of hectares from the Palestinian land, where they also built a wall, which is condemned by the International High Court for Justice in La Haye. And also the settlements was considered as illegal, yet Israel is still going on confiscating and building more and more settlements in our land, which means that Israel, supported by the United States, and I have to say that the United States now is working as a client for Israel in our area. The United States administration doesn't accept to condemn the policy of confiscation of the land of the Palestinians. Then, to express this solidarity, I think that by launching campaigns for BDS, I think it will affect not only the media, but also it will affect Israel in its economy. And whenever this goes on and on, as long as Israel doesn't abide by the international law, it will help us a lot to continue the struggle with this support of BDS. And then nobody can accuse anyone who uses this method. I mean, by boycotting Israeli goods, nobody will accuse that he's anti-Semite or is against the Jews or whatever lies that Israel always say for people who support the Palestinians against Israel. You have mentioned that in Britain it was said that Israel is putting in prison children and using both against them. And this is us that now people or even governments or human rights organizations are focusing on the most torturous situation of Palestinian children in Palestine, which will help also us and our children, that there are other people feel with them and who raise their voices against such policy that Israel is carrying against us.
Thank you, Leila. Then coming back to the question about what is happening in the region with the uprising, as I said, I think there is the potential of this spilling over into Israel and the West Bank and the Gaza, and we have seen examples of this. I think in Israel you had last year the movement for social justice, housing, and so on, which was revived in June. But also we know the problems with and the limits of such a movement. I was just watching a few weeks ago a film of the demonstration in Tel Aviv, I think, in which a Palestinian woman was invited to speak about social justice, and they did not let her go on the podium. So she was mad, and rightly so. And her response was, if you just don't let me speak about social justice, I'm not even going to speak about the occupation. How are you going to solve this problem? So I would like to hear your ideas about the limits of such a movement in Israel itself, and then the potential of that happening in Gaza and the West Bank. And actually last week there was a demonstration in Ramallah against the visit of Shaul Hafez. Yes. And this was unfortunately repressed by the PA. And for me, at least, I think the best chance of ending the occupation and liberating Palestine is linking up the struggle in Palestine with what is happening in the region. So, your views on that?
Now, what happened in the region is that the feeling for the people, whether it's in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Libya, in Bahrain, in Syria, this is because people could not accept or bear those kinds of regimes, the regimes. So, and the I can't say it's a revolution, but it's a mass movement that made the head of the regimes in these countries to step down, and this also has it has an impact on the situation. I expect that as long as surroundings are right and regime I have to say that when Israel faces any crisis, interior crisis, the leadership begins to
Sorry, Leila, I'll have to interrupt you. There's a sort of technical problem, and I've been instructed, Sarah, this is for you, to put your microphone on mute, if you would, to get rid of the interference.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Leila, do continue.
Whenever Israel is faced with interior crisis, the leadership there begins to speak about the external danger coming from Gaza, coming from Iran, coming from Lebanon. This is always, we are used to that, and we understand why. They want to export their crisis by creating new clashes outside. And this is through the Israeli history. We know that they always export their crisis on our expense. And just last month they were raiding Gaza with no reason. It's just because they wanted to end this crisis inside Israel itself, in the society. Now, still there are movement in Israel in itself for social reforms or social demands. Now their voices, the voices of the leadership is turning to Iran. And this means that they have to stop the voices in Israel itself to focus on Iran as the big threat for the existence of Israel. By this way, they can maneuver. But at the same time, whenever there is a demonstration for social demands for the people, they build more and more settlements in the West Bank, which means that any solution for the demands of the people, it's on our expense in Palestine. As for the PA and its relation with the people, now our people know very well that this PA is no more representing them, and they are against its policy. So people want by the police who injured many of those protesters, because it's of no use to meet any of those leaders of Israel who are the prosecutors of the Palestinians.
Thank you very much, Leila. I'm now going to open up questions for the audience. I just want short questions, and I'm going to try to get 3 people at a time to show their hands.
According to Professor Chomsky, the client state is Israel and America is the power. And in your talk before, you put it the other way around, which I thought was very interesting. That you said in the area, in the region, that America is acting as a client on behalf of Israel. What do you think?
Yes, I meant it. The United States is a powerful country, but yet Israel uses the United States as a client to protect their interests. So it's something, you can say it's dialectical. Sometimes Israel
Thank you.
Very slowly.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to ask Sarah, I think Simone de Beauvoir writes a lot about the kind of emotional and ethical dilemmas of fiction and autobiography. For example, in The Mandarins, she fictionalises a lot of real life people, so John Paul Sartre, Nelson, Algren, Albert Camus, so on. So if you found that similar or different, and to what extent you'd have an ethical dilemma, as it were, trying to do justice to a real person while to represent a cause at the same time. And to Leila, you'd say possibly a bit more specifically about Syria, and that, to quote, I mean, the great African poet Aimé Césaire once famously said,
Come on, keep
yeah,
it going.
Hitler didn't in Africa, the European powers did in Africa what Hitler later did in Europe. I stress I'm quoting an opinion, not expressing my own organisation. And I wondered if, because a lot of people are drawing increasing analogies one way or another between what Israel is now doing and what has been done by other powers historically. So I stress I'm not expressing any opinion on that myself, but I ask it not to be controversial, but I think that would be very useful to discuss if you can say something about that. So thanks very much, it's been an honour to talk to you. So I wanted to say something about that.
Hi, Leila, if you don't mind, I'd like to take the question that was asked to me first, simply because I'm going to have to duck out in a second, because we also have an event running here in Ramallah that's supposed to start in 7 minutes. So, and I'm not even in the same building yet, which is also why I must apologise for the quality of the Skype link. Yes, I mean, obviously there are considerable ethical questions to be considered writing biography, especially that of a living person. It's quite an intimidating prospect as well. I suppose the way that I ended up approaching the whole project was, on one hand, because I had the privilege of this very substantial body of interview, that gave me one source. And then the approach that I think I tried to take was then to situate that within a broader context. And one of the things I was worried about when the book came out was that I suspect there are people out there who would have liked me to have written a straight hagiography, and I don't think it is. But it's also not, in my view, my position to necessarily judge. So it's about striking that balance between reflecting the fact that there are other views, whether or not I agree with them, and then also kind of trying to remain honest to I suppose where I'm coming from as someone who's been involved, is still involved in Palestine Solidarity, somebody who is a feminist, somebody who comes from, I suppose, the non-party based left. And yeah, so I mean, in some ways you could see it as an absolute ethical minefield. I hope I've done a reasonable job. I think from the interactions that we've had, that Leila is really reasonably happy with the results. Again, this is something that I often get asked. She saw the manuscript before it was published. She had right of kind of removal or questioning on personal issues, and there were one or two personal things that we did take out because they were things that were very specifically about her or her family and not about kind of her public persona. But she didn't and never asked for kind of, I suppose, political oversight of what was in there. So on one level that kind of added to my dilemmas, I suppose. On the other hand, it did mean that I could, I suppose, write something that for me felt like it was being honest to who I am and where I come from politically, without, I hope, being exploitative, which I think is always the danger of taking somebody's life and I suppose trying to write about it without appropriating it. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you very, very much to John and to Marxism Festival and to everybody for coming. But I very much regret it, but I'm going to have to duck out now. So thank you very much. I hope the rest of the festival goes extremely well.
Thank you very much. Leila, the questioner had a question for you. Did you pick it up?
I think it's the right for the people, for the right for democracy, for expression, for changing the system, the political system. But at the same time, I think it's not the same way that happened in Egypt. What is meant in Syria is that it's an external forces supporting military people, not only from Syria but also from outside Syria, under a reason to make Bashar al-Assad step down. It's the same way that it was used in Iraq. It was said against Saddam Hussein and his regime. But what is meant in Syria by what is called the opposition, the armed, especially the armed opposition, who took advantage of the peaceful demonstrations that were in Syria. And I think that the main issue is to end the role of Syria as a country and as a people, to make division among the sects, like what happened also in Iraq. So I'm not on the side of this kind of opposition. We are in opposition as patriotic people with peaceful means, and it happened in Tunisia, in Yemen, in Egypt.
Come back in a second.
Hi, my name is Muhammad. Well, I try to be as brief as possible. One doesn't get the chance to speak to Leila Khaled, the great Leila Khaled, every day. But yeah, I'm Palestinian from Gaza. But what you said about Syria is quite unsettling for me. But that was the best introduction to my question. So I moved from Syria and remain on the question of violence. And I think if there is only one person on earth who can answer my question, I think Leila is that person. You being a freedom fighter. Yeah, I'll get to the question.
Yeah, please.
So you being a freedom fighter and being involved in the armed struggle, what do you think the role of armed struggle can play nowadays in the context of Israel-Palestine? Do you think that Palestinians can again use armed struggle as a means of ending the Israeli occupation?
I studied and during my studies and my knowledge, I didn't know that any people has liberated themselves either from colonization or from other kinds of oppression, except by a revolution and armed struggle. And history taught us that when oppression and injustice is the law, then resistance is the duty. And it is our duty. With occupation like the Zionist occupation to Palestine, nothing can end this conflict except by a revolution and armed struggle. On the other side, I understand that peaceful measures or peaceful movements are important, but they are not the mainstream. The mainstream between the occupants and those who are occupied is armed struggle. Israel is occupying us with force, with arms, and occupation is terrorism. To end terrorism, you have to use revolutionary violence, and revolutionary violence means arms.
It's an honour to speak to you, Comrade Khaled. My question, and I hope you can understand me because I'm from Newcastle, so that might be more tricky. My question is, with the complicity of the PA in the Israeli occupation and the almost death of the PLO, where do you see a genuine Palestinian liberation movement coming from now, today, and how can that be built?
I think during the revolution after 1967, the Palestinians have achieved their identity and the sole representative of the Palestinians, which is the PLO. While after Oslo Accords was signed, then PLO has been marginalized. Now we are calling for rebuilding this sole representative of the Palestinians, where all factions can be part of it. I mean by which I mean that Hamas and Al Jihad also to be included in PLO institutions, because if we don't do this step, then it means that it will turn against us, because now PLO has been replaced by the PA. The PA is not representing the Palestinians outside Palestine, at least, while the Palestinians outside are about 6.5 million, and those are 2/3 of the Palestinian population. So it's the PLO which should be rebuilt and to restore its position as a representative of us. That's why in Cairo there were a lot of meetings there among the factions, and we all agreed upon to rebuild and to activate PLO. In Jordan also there were meetings for the High Committee of PLO, how to drew a rule for the elections outside and inside Palestine for the PNC, which is the parliament of the Palestinians. And I think this, with the political will of all the factions and all the civilian organizations, we can go forward to rebuild this PLO and to activate it to the extent that it is the sole voice of the Palestinians.
Leila, it's lovely to talk to you. Sorry. It's lovely to talk to you. When I was a teenager, you were my hero. I've been a revolutionary socialist ever since then, and I want to ask you two things. One of which is that Sarah was a bit modest about herself, because Sarah has also written a book about visiting Palestine, and actually her book, The Black Guide to Palestine, has now made it possible for ordinary people to go there, and it's something which I would recommend that people do. That's something people need to know. The second thing is, could you tell us, as socialists, there are 4,500 of us here, what it is particularly about the Palestine situation and the unique nature of imperialism that makes it important for us to raise these issues here? And what do you think, as a Palestinian, are the most important things that we as socialists in this country can do?
I think that we always need to spread the news about realities in what's going on in Palestine. And by spreading the news and spreading these realities and the facts of the conflict, it will raise awareness among people all over the world when this
Hi, you spoke about the difficulty of being a woman involved in struggle. I wanted to ask you, as a radical, progressive revolutionary and as a woman, what your view is of Hamas and Hezbollah and more broadly of Ennahda in Tunisia and of the Brotherhood in Egypt. And if you are, if you are worried by anti-imperialism being articulated as Islamism, or if you think that actually that's a fear exaggerated by the West and that we should be supporting those groups, how do you feel as a Palestinian about those movements?
That the components of a society is a big diversity, and this diversity of the components brings up the representatives of such diversity. But what for me, it's not now in our situation, it's not the issue of ideology. It's the issue of resisting occupation. As long as any part, whether it has a different ideology than mine, but is resisting this occupation, then we are in the stage of liberation, which means that all components of different ideologies can have a national front to face the enemy, whoever it is. So as long as Hezbollah or Hamas or whoever has the Islamist groups are looking for the liberation as a goal of the people, then we are in the same trench. Why, if they when they come to authority and they want to Islamize, for example, the society, then this is a big contradiction and we will oppose it. But as long as it is the goal is to liberate the country and using arm and resisting, then it's okay with it. Has defeated Israel in 2006.
I was also interested when Sarah said that one of the interesting things for her about writing the book was about the challenges you faced as a woman within the movement. I wondered if you could speak more about that and maybe speak about some of the other women that we don't hear about so much. Where I'm from in Glasgow, we've been involved in a campaign in solidarity with the hunger strikers called We Are All, Hannah Shalabi, who is obviously also a woman figure. I wonder if you could talk a bit more about her and other women in the struggle.
I'm not exaggerating if I say that women are so faithful to the rights of their people, because women give life, and they are the ones who struggle to protect the lives that they have given to the world. Before I became a mother, I used to see the fear in the eyes of our children. I myself felt and lived that fear before when we were obliged to leave Palestine. This means that women, when they are involved, they can do a lot to protect the life that they have brought, and at the same time, it gives them the confidence that the future for their children will be better than the present that they are living in. At the same time, we are a part of the society. We cannot struggle alone. We are a part of the people's struggle itself. And at the same time, it is a class struggle too. It's not always saying that women can do things that men cannot do, or on the contrary. A human being can do what is expected of him to do, whether it was a man or a woman. But the movement for women's rights shouldn't be separated from the rights of the people themselves, because women's issues and women's cause is a part of the society. cause. It's a cause for the society, not only for women as women. Although I understand that there are organizations, women organizations, calling for their rights, but we cannot struggle for our rights without the help of the progressive forces in the society. That's why I feel that I'm a part of this world movement of people calling for their rights, and at the same time, as a woman, I feel that it's my duty to mobilize more and more and to raise awareness about how we see our rights as human beings and as women in our societies.
I last met you about 30 years ago. Many things have changed in the world since then. Can you say something a bit about how the politics of Shabi has changed over the years, since the 80s?
I don't think that we have changed our strategies, because still we didn't achieve our rights. But we have put or changed the tactics only. And the tactics that we use is according to the current situation. Now, the main, for example, the main issue and the main mission to us now is to achieve national unity among all factions and ending this division among the Palestinians. But before that, we are assigned to achieve the unity of the left groups, because this is the one of the targets that we are trying to do or to achieve. Because if the left is united, then it's only that facing the right wing. But when we are divided, then the right wing, whether it is represented by Fatah, for example, or the Islamists, then we cannot be a strong force in the society. That's why we have these two missions, to unite the left groups and then to achieve the national unity, so that we can face the occupation according to a minimum program based on resistance.
It's very close to 5 o'clock. I'm going to ask Leila one last question and then close the meeting. Leila, we touched on the Arab Spring, and one of the great achievements in Egypt is the first democratic election of the Muslim Brotherhood, who's a very long history of fighting for Palestinian liberation. I wonder what you think about the prospect of a demand which calls on the new democratically elected government in Egypt to immediately open the border with Gaza. That is a demand I would have thought would be popular throughout the region and with every single Palestinian supporter, so I think we'd all like to hear your view on that.
We expect that from the new, after the elections and the president now is from the Muslim Brotherhood. First of all, he has a very an inheritance from the other regime. He or his party cannot do everything at once. They need time to solve issues, internal issues, especially economics. But at the same time, the border is open. In Rafah, the border is open. People can go and come. But I think it will take time that they will open it without any permissions, because still there should be a permission. But I think that they are not going to change radically, to to end the siege on Gaza, but they can ease the crossing through the borders to Egypt or to Gaza, and also for the goods and but not to end the relation with Israel, because we heard the president after his election saying that he respects and he's committed to all international treaties and agreements, which meant and he didn't mention anything about Camp David. And this means to us that the external policy of Egypt is not going to change a lot.
Leila, can I say thank you very much on behalf of everybody here. It's been an absolutely wonderful occasion to have this dialogue, and the dialogue worked extremely well, and thank you very much for your very detailed answers to tricky questions across Skype with all the technical difficulties. So thank you very much indeed, and we can give Leila a massive round of applause.